All right, I'm going to cover for you guys and gals today a fairly novice topic, and it's something that a lot of experienced lifters are gonna laugh and be like, "This is common sense. Everybody knows this," but I don't think that everyone does. I don't think that everyone does, and I think a lot of people want to focus exclusively, even for size, on mostly compound or mostly isolation movements, and that's actually silly. That's not how we use them. Generally speaking, you're going to want to build most of the muscle on your body with big, heavy compound movements. And I'm generally going to define those as barbell exercises, weighted body weight exercises, so on and so forth. Some exercises count as both concurrently. Some actually count as both. Like a back squat is a barbell exercise. It's a weighted body weight movement, right? Whereas when you see me doing a pull-up here, that is obviously a weighted body weight exercise. But that's the idea. So you'll see me doing, a few big basic movements here. The only really one of the classic ones I'm doing there at the start is the deadlift. Because then I'm over there doing weighted pull-ups. I'm doing, heavy incline benching. And yeah, I like to take even some of these other exercises pretty heavy. I don't have a problem with taking any barbell lift down into the 5 to 6 rep range. Right here, inclines, right? We can take these down to a nice heavy rep range with good form, good control. And again, when we're chasing size, notice how I'm doing these exercises. They are controlled. Even though they're moving fairly big weights, we're not doing so at the expense of form. We want good stretches at the bottom. We want to maintain control of the weight all the way through. But then afterwards, you'll see through this video, just I have a few exercises through here. You'll see me doing some tricep extensions. This is a version called a skull crusher. You'll see me doing some standing dumbbell curls. All right, these are arm exercises. So why might we do stuff like this? Well, mainly because our triceps and biceps might be lagging from some of these big movements. Okay, so that's where we start filling in the gaps. If you do a lot of heavy pressing, you might actually have a really good lateral head of your tricep, but the long head may be lacking a little bit. A good extension, a good tricep isolation movement that works that long head can help correct that. Now, you need to know which ones do that. If you have ones where people are like, oh, you got to keep your elbow locked down by your side, well, that's not going to work the long head of your tricep very effectively. You're just building more of what you got from the bench press or the incline bench. But if you do other types where the elbow's in a different position, shoulder move forward, particularly behind the head stuff, right? That can be really good for that. I don't care whether it's with a bar, a cable, a dumbbell. And that's the thing with a lot of these smaller movements. People get too caught up in those of thinking one modality is better. They're really not, guys. People have gotten phenomenal gains on isolation movements with barbells and dumbbells for years. Some people prefer a cable for some of them. You know what? As long as you are working the muscle through the intended range of motion, you're creating fatigue, they all work. They all work. But don't think that you have to have one. I always get people who do that like, well, I don't have access to this. Maybe they're at home and they have barbells and easy bars. They don't have dumbbells or enough to do some of them. Other than some really light ones. Okay, then find a barbell exercise. Find a plate. A lot of times you use a plate for those. The idea is the same. Just get the small movements done. But that is how we use these. We fill in the gaps. Like the pull-up right here. Pull-ups do work biceps, but it really is a back exercise, right? Particularly the way you see me doing it. This is a very lat dominant and lower trap dominant exercise. There is some bicep involvement. Your biceps will grow from it some. But they're not going to grow maximally. It's going to leave a lot on the table. You're going to end up getting more forearm than you are bicep from that movement. Just because of the way that it's situated. You'll get some brachialis, though, underneath the head of the bicep. It helps with that bicep peak. But the main bicep, it's going to leave quite a bit to be desired. Not saying it won't work it. And in theory, if you did enough of them, it might get big enough. But how many sets of them you have to do? You're going to reach a point to where you're living doing pull-ups trying to maximize bicep growth. It's just not a good use of energy. The same thing with the smaller exercises. So let's come to that. People are like, well, can I just do isolation for everything? How long do you want to spend at the gym? I don't know that you need to isolate every single muscle in the body. What I might recommend, look at what heads aren't getting worked enough. The long head of your tricep isn't getting worked enough. it's probably a good idea to do some tricep work that hits the long head of your tricep. If you're doing a ton of pulling in your rear delts, you're getting a lot of work, you might not need to spend a lot of time worried about them. You can do smaller movements that isolate the side head of the delt a little more, which will still carry over to the rear head, by the way. Anything that works the lateral head will work the posterior head, and vice versa. Just less emphasis. But if you're doing a lot of rowing and stuff, and you're doing some laterals then to work that side head, the rear head's probably getting enough work for most people. Okay? Same thing, people start worrying about the front head. I mean, if you're incline benching or overhead pressing, the interior head of your delt's probably good, if you're doing a sufficient volume. See how that works? But that lateral head might need some work. Maybe your calves need some work. Maybe your quads or your hamstrings are just not getting enough work. Maybe all your pressing, maybe your arms, your triceps have grown phenomenally well from pressing. Maybe you're more comfortable close grip pressing instead of really wide like I do. Because most of my benching these days, I have the index finger on the rings. My pointer finger actually is on the rings. So I'm gripped real wide. Maybe you bench a little closer. Maybe you seem to need that for your shoulder health. Well, in that case, some isolation work for your pecs might be warranted. You might need to consider some flies, whether they're with a dumbbell or a cable. I personally think dumbbells work better than cables for flies, my opinion, just due to the lengthened positions. But not saying cable flies are useless by any means. Simply looking at where muscles tend to get the best muscle growth. But that's the idea. You don't need to do everything. I would say, for most people, maybe half of the muscles in your body might need some isolation work. Right? You'll know what they are. They're the ones that are not growing as fast as you want, or they have lagging sections. Right? You have certain heads that are just underdeveloped. Well, in that case, it absolutely makes sense to do so. Or maybe you're just obsessed with a specific muscle. I know for a lot of guys it's going to be biceps. I've had clients who are obsessed with side delts. Like I've had a lady client who we used to do vlogs with. She was obsessed with her side delts. So we did lateral raises for her all the time, like 10 sets a week of them. Why? Because she's like, this is my pet muscle. I really, really care about those. We did tons of squatting and deadlifting and benching and chin-ups and all those things. But she really cared about that side head. She didn't care so much about curls and biceps, but she just wanted that round delt. So in that case, we did a bunch of work for it because she really cared about it. This is how we use isolation work. This is how we use compound work. This is how you combine them together effectively to get full development. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys and gals next time.